My brother said he was dying. I paused my career, postponed my wedding, and gave him everything. Then I found the messages between him and my fiancée. And that was just the beginning. I was getting mic'd up for a live segment when I got the call. My producer was yelling something in my earpiece, the countdown clock was running, but all I could focus on was my phone vibrating nonstop in my pocket. 5 missed calls. 2 from my mom. 3 from my brother Jamie. I remember fumbling with the volume knob just enough to catch the tail end of what she said. Your brother needs you. Now, I don't remember much of the segment I did that day. I must have autopiloted my way through it, read whatever script they threw on the teleprompter. But the second I was off air, I bolted. I didn't even change out of my suit. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, Jamie was sitting on the porch. Just him and a half-empty coffee mug. No words. No movement. Just staring into the middle distance like something out of a movie. It scared me, the way he looked right then. This was Jamie, my older brother, my childhood shadow, my on and off best friend depending on the year. He was the funny one. The charming one. The guy who could flirt his way out of a parking ticket and charm a whole dinner table into forgetting he was 40 minutes late. Seeing that guy so still? That was the first gut punch. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were red. I thought maybe he'd been crying, but I couldn't tell. Then he said it. Like he was reading it off a cue card. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 1. But it's aggressive. The next few minutes are kind of a blur. I remember my mom wailing in the kitchen, my dad pacing back and forth mumbling something about getting a second opinion. I remember Jamie sitting there, suddenly surrounded by tissues and whispering that the doctors said treatment might only buy him months, not years. And me? I just stood there. I didn't ask for paperwork or specifics or even which hospital. That kind of logic doesn't exist when you're hit with a bomb like that. I'm not proud of it, but I didn't doubt him for a second. Why would I? I dropped everything. Literally. The next day, I submitted a leave of absence from work. Told my boss I needed time for family matters. That same evening, I told Vanessa, my fiancée, that we needed to postpone the wedding. I can't think about vows or flower arrangements while my brother's dying, I told her. She didn't argue. She cried a little, then hugged me and said she understood. Jamie started chemo, or so we thought. He didn't let anyone come with him to appointments. He said it was too hard, too personal. I didn't push it. I figured if that were me, I'd probably want to keep some parts private too. But it wasn't just the appointments. He didn't want us in the room when he talked to his doctors on the phone. Didn't want to show us any of the pamphlets or prescriptions. Said the hospital gave him a whole binder, but he'd left it in the car. Always the car. I'd catch him sometimes, smiling at texts, scrolling through social media, humming to himself. It didn't line up. But every time I'd ask how he was doing, he'd just sigh and say, just taking it day by day, little bro. You never know how many you've got left. Vanessa, for what it's worth, went full Florence Nightingale. She was always checking in on him, bringing him soup, watching movies with him while I ran errands. He just needs company, she'd say. And yeah, it stung a little when she started spending more time with Jamie than me, but how do you say don't comfort my dying brother without sounding like a complete asshole? Jamie started documenting his journey online. Set up a blog. Just trying to spread some awareness, he told me, when I raised an eyebrow. If I can help just one other person catch this early. People loved it. They called him brave, inspirational, raw. Co-workers from the station started reaching out to him. One even suggested he do a guest spot at the network to talk about his diagnosis. And that's how Jamie ended up sitting in my chair. At first, it was just one segment. Then 2. Then, somehow, he was filling in for me while I was off. Producers started suggesting maybe Jamie could stick around longer. I smiled and nodded, but something twisted in my gut. This was supposed to be my break year. The year I leveled up. I had just landed a major anchor spot. Vanessa and I were planning a spring wedding, and everything felt like it was finally aligning. Until it all stopped, and Jamie stepped into my life like he'd always been meant to be there instead. And the worst part? I was still rooting for him. Still driving him to follow-ups I wasn't allowed to sit in for. Still postponing my life because I thought I'd hate myself if I didn't. Because when you're watching someone you love die or think you are, every other instinct takes a back seat. But the doubt? The quiet gnawing feeling that something's off? It never really went away. At first, I told myself the distance was because of the grief. That's what I wanted to believe. Jamie's diagnosis had shattered us all in different ways, and maybe Vanessa and I were just struggling to find our footing through it. I wasn't naive enough to expect smooth sailing during something like this. But things were shifting, noticeably. And the shift wasn't mutual. It was one-sided. I started noticing it in small things. how she stopped wearing the engagement ring around the apartment, how she'd always glance at her phone when it buzzed and then turn the screen face down. There was a time she used to laugh at my bad cooking attempts or complain about me leaving my socks on the floor, stupid couple things that used to make the place feel like home. But lately, it was all silence and avoidance. A tight-lipped smile if I asked what was wrong. A soft, "I'm just tired," that was always a little too practiced. I didn't just let it slide. I brought it up, calmly at first, then with more urgency as the days passed. I asked if she wanted to talk. I asked if we were okay. I asked if Jamie was confiding something in her that he wasn't telling me. She said no. Every time. She told me I was being paranoid, that everything was just hard right now, and I needed to give her some space to breathe. But her eyes never met mine when she said it. I stopped being polite after a while. One night, I came home early after picking up some groceries, and Jamie's shoes were by the door. I wasn't expecting him. Vanessa hadn't mentioned anything. I walked in to find them on the couch, close, too close, watching something on her laptop, laughing about something I didn't catch. They jumped a little when I walked in. Jamie smiled, overly casual, and Vanessa quickly closed the screen. She said they were going over some video ideas for his blog. I didn't believe her. I didn't say anything right then. I just went to the kitchen and put the groceries away. But I started watching more carefully after that. Jamie was always around. Too often. Even when I said I needed time with Vanessa, just the two of us, somehow, he'd pop up. A quick visit, or she'd be checking in on him before I got back and would conveniently stay longer than planned. When I confronted her about it, she got defensive. She accused me of being selfish, of forgetting that Jamie was dying. That line? It was always the shield. No matter what I questioned, I was the one in the wrong because questioning someone who's supposedly terminal was seen as cruel. But I kept noticing things. Our conversations got shorter. Our silences got longer. A few days later, she packed a small suitcase and said she needed space. She claimed she was going to stay with a friend for a bit, maybe take some time to sort through her thoughts. I didn't argue. The next week was the longest of my life. Jamie didn't reach out. Not once. Not even to pretend everything was okay. My parents kept checking in, asking if I was all right. I told them I was just tired. That was a lie. I wasn't tired. I was furious. I was grieving. I tried to bury myself in distractions, but it wasn't working. Not this time. I felt like everything I'd built, my job, my relationship, my future, had been quietly handed over to someone else while I was too busy trying to be a good brother. The moment I found out was nothing dramatic. No whispered confession. No cinematic caught-in-the-act moment. Just a gut punch wrapped in digital pixels. It was late. I couldn't sleep again. Vanessa was not at home. That evening, she left her tablet on the sofa. I wasn't looking for anything. Or maybe I was. I don't know anymore. I only know what I saw. There were dozens of messages between her and Jamie. Some were harmless. Some weren't. Most were late at night, time-stamped in hours when I assumed she was asleep in the same bed as me. There were emojis, inside jokes, little phrases that, when read alone, might seem innocent. But together, they read like a relationship forming quietly behind my back. One built on shared moments I wasn't invited into. The one that ended it for me was a message from Jamie that read, "Last night was hard, but worth it." I didn't scroll further. I didn't want more confirmation. I just sat there, numb, the kind of numb that comes after you've crossed from suspicion into certainty. I waited until she came back out. I told her I needed to talk. She could tell something was wrong. Her face shifted. I asked her point blank. I just told her what I'd seen. Told her that I knew something had happened. That it had been happening. She didn't lie. Instead, she just said she didn't know how to explain it. That it wasn't planned. That Jamie was hurting, and she had been hurting too. And they just started talking and it escalated. She claimed it wasn't what I thought it was. That it was complicated. That she still cared about me, but she was confused. I wasn't confused. I told her to pack her things. I just stood there while she grabbed whatever she could fit into a bag, and I didn't say another word. When the door shut behind her, I sat on the floor of our empty hallway for what felt like hours. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I called my parents. I didn't want to, but some part of me hoped they'd be on my side. That they'd see how twisted this all was. They weren't. My mom was hesitant, trying to sound gentle, but her words hit like gravel. She said Vanessa was a sweet girl, and I should try to forgive her. She said Jamie was sick and scared, and I shouldn't let this come between us. My dad wasn't even that soft. He told me, flat out, that I'd been distant lately. That Jamie was going through something unimaginable, and maybe Vanessa just needed someone who was really present. They weren't angry at Jamie. They weren't disappointed in Vanessa. They were disappointed in me. That conversation gutted me more than the breakup. Hearing them twist the situation like I was somehow to blame, like I had driven Vanessa into Jamie's arms with my job, my stress, my silence, like the betrayal didn't matter because Jamie had a doctor's note. That's when the blinders came off. For the first time since this all began, I stopped looking at Jamie through the lens of a terminal illness. I started replaying everything, every excuse, every detail, every moment that hadn't quite added up. The secret appointments, the lack of test results, the way he always had just the right words for every emotional beat, the way he never looked worse for wear, never had a bad day, never had a moment of weakness that wasn't publicly broadcast for sympathy points. He looked good. Too good. I remembered the fundraiser, the sudden popularity, the job opportunity he accepted at the station, the perfect arc forming around him, bravery, betrayal, redemption. It was all just too neat. And now he had Vanessa, the final piece. The betrayal didn't just break my heart. It cleared my vision. I wasn't looking at a sick man anymore. I was looking at a showman, a manipulator, someone who had stolen my life piece by piece and dressed it up like a tragedy to get applause. And I was done playing along. I picked up the phone and dialed an old college friend, someone I hadn't talked to in years but who now worked in hospital administration. I didn't say much, just that I needed to confirm something. Just a name. Just one facility. He said he'd look into it. He owed me a favor. That was the beginning. I didn't know what I'd find, not for sure. But I knew what I was hoping for, even if I couldn't admit it out loud yet. I hoped it was a lie. Because if Jamie really had cancer, I'd feel like the worst person alive. But if he didn't, then he wasn't just a cheater. He was a fraud. And I was going to burn the whole act down. When my buddy from college finally called me back, I already knew what he was going to say. I think a part of me had known for weeks, maybe even since the day Jamie first told us. But hearing the actual words still knocked the wind out of me. There was no record of Jamie being treated at their hospital. Not for cancer. Not for anything. No appointments. No prescriptions. No billing history. Nothing. His name had never even popped up in their system. I didn't say much during that call. Just thanks, and that I owed him one. But when I hung up, I sat in my car for over an hour, engine running, just gripping the steering wheel like it might ground me. Jamie wasn't sick. It was all a lie. My mind was on fire, running through every memory with new context. The tears, the social media posts, the vague answers about test results, it all made sense now. He wasn't trying to shield us from the pain. He was managing the narrative. I dug deeper. The blog he ran? It was monetized. He was pulling in thousands from ad revenue and affiliate links for cancer wellness products. He wasn't hiding. He just knew we weren't looking closely. I didn't go to my parents. They wouldn't believe me, not yet. I didn't call Vanessa. I had nothing left to say to her. I spent the next week quietly collecting everything I could. Screenshots, donation receipts, archived copies of the blog. I even got my friend to pull a report from the pharmacy. No records of chemo prescriptions under Jamie's name. I felt like I was building a case against a stranger. But what really cracked it open was the voicemail. It came from one of Jamie's old friends, a mutual from our high school days who had seen my face on the fundraiser page and decided to reach out. He said he thought the whole thing felt fishy. That Jamie had confided in him months ago about wanting to reinvent himself. Said something about how dying young made you immortal in people's memories. The guy sent me a voicemail Jamie had left after a night of drinking. I listened to it 3 times before it really sank in. Jamie was laughing, slurring his words a little, but still crystal clear. He said people were idiots, that it was almost too easy, that he'd ride the sympathy wave straight into legacy, and maybe even snag a wife on the way out. I sat there shaking. He didn't just manipulate us. He was proud of it. And the worst part? It was working. He was still at my old job, still charming everyone, still playing the tragic hero. And from what I'd heard, he was planning something big. A farewell party before flying overseas for an experimental treatment. That mythical cure that would either save him or send him off in a blaze of glory. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to tell him what I knew. Not yet. I was going to let him walk into that room, full of cameras and donors and applause. I was going to let him give his big emotional speech. And then I was going to take the mic. He took the stage about an hour in. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight found him at the mic. He launched into his speech, equal parts humble and grandiose. He talked about fear and resilience, about learning what really matters in life. He thanked Vanessa, called her his anchor. The room gave a soft, sympathetic laugh. Then he said something that made me clench my fists. He said, "I've lived a fuller life in the last year than I did in the 32 before it. And for that, I'm grateful." That's when I stood up. No one called me forward. I didn't ask for the mic. I just walked to the stage, past the tables of donors and old co-workers and sympathetic strangers, and stood next to my brother. Jamie looked at me, his smile flickering again. I asked if I could say a few words. Just a few. He hesitated, but the cameras were rolling and the audience was waiting. So he handed me the mic with a smug little nod, like he didn't think I had anything worth saying. He had no idea what was coming. I started slow. I thanked everyone for showing up, told them it was heartening to see such love in the room, said this night was about truth and courage and standing up in the face of the unthinkable. And then I opened my suit jacket, pulled out a flash drive, and plugged it into the laptop hooked up to the projector. Slide 1, a screenshot from the hospital system. Jamie's name. No records. No visits. No treatment. I let it hang on the screen for a few seconds. Slide 2, pharmacy records. No chemo prescriptions. No supportive meds. No oncology referrals. Murmurs started. I could hear shifting in the chairs. Some people sat up straighter. A woman near the front squinted at the screen, then back at Jamie. Slide 3, flight confirmations and hotel receipts from LA on the same dates Jamie claimed to be receiving intensive treatment. Photos of him on a branded rooftop shoot, drinking green juice and wearing sponsored gear. I could feel the tension shifting now. The air had thickened. A man in the back mumbled something about scam. Jamie stepped forward, trying to speak, but I held the mic just out of reach. "I'm not done yet," I said calmly, and continued to tell the truth as I flipped through the slides. Then I played the recording. It came through the speakers clear as day. Jamie's voice, slightly slurred from drinking, laughing. He called the people around him idiots. Said the whole thing was easier than he thought. That pretending to be dying was the best thing that ever happened to him. That people were throwing money and praise at him like he was already dead. And that maybe, if he played it right, he'd land a wife and a legacy at the same time. Then Jamie rushed to me, pushed me away, and started switching off all the equipment. Then the whole truth came out. The room went silent. Then someone shouted, "Are you kidding me?" Someone else stood up and demanded their donation back. Glasses clinked as people began rising from their seats. A woman knocked over a chair, trying to get to the aisle. Vanessa wasn't in the spotlight, but I saw her across the room, white as a sheet. She turned and walked out before the screaming started. Jamie reached for the mic again. He looked stunned, cornered, like a man waking from a dream right into a nightmare. He started sputtering something about being misinterpreted. He tried to say the voice was taken out of context. Nobody was listening. His boss from the station stormed up to the stage and told him he was fired, effective immediately. Another guy yelled that he was calling the police if refunds weren't processed. A drink flew toward the stage and shattered near Jamie's feet. The crowd surged. Phones came out. Videos. Pictures. The legend he built crumbled in front of him, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a man exposed and choking on his own lies. I walked out the same way I came in, quietly and on my own terms. I didn't stick around to see how it ended. I walked out before the police were called, before the fundraiser got shut down, before anyone could ask me for an interview. I didn't want the spotlight back. Not like that. I'd been in front of cameras long enough to know when it was time to disappear. That night, I sat on a bench 2 blocks away from the venue, still in my suit, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. I didn't feel victorious, just hollow. You'd think that after exposing everything, after watching Jamie's face fall apart in front of the very people he conned, I'd feel something like satisfaction. But I didn't. Not exactly. It wasn't joy or pride or revenge. It was something quieter, like closure dragged through broken glass. In the days that followed, the fallout spread fast. The station released an official statement severing all ties with Jamie. Multiple sponsors pulled out and issued refunds. Donors were furious. Some filed fraud reports. The blog went offline within 48 hours. Vanessa never reached out. I don't know if she was ashamed or just too cowardly to face me. Maybe both. Her social accounts went dark the day after the party. I heard from someone she moved in with her sister out of town. Good. Jamie tried calling once. I didn't pick up. I saw his name flash across my screen, and I just watched it ring. I didn't even let it go to voicemail. Just killed the call and blocked the number. It's strange, the silence that follows a storm. How quickly everything slows down after months of chaos. I started sleeping better. I went back to work, not at the station, but in a smaller media role. Something quieter, less on camera. I needed the distance. 3 weeks after the party, I sent Jamie an envelope. No return address. Inside was a copy of the fake remission certificate I found in his files, one of the documents he'd been planning to unveil at the farewell party before it all fell apart. The one with forged doctor signatures, hospital stamps, carefully doctored test results. Across the top, in thick red ink, I stamped one word. Void. No note. No signature. Just that. But behind the certificate was a typed line. Nothing fancy. Just one sentence, centered on the page. You could have just been my brother. But you chose to be a villain. Hope it was worth it. I never got a reply. Didn't expect one. Sometimes I wonder what he thinks when he reads that. If he kept it. If he burned it. If he ever replays that voicemail and realizes just how deeply he screwed himself. Not just with the public, but with the one person who actually gave a damn before it all went to hell. But those thoughts come and go. Mostly, I just don't think about him anymore. That was the last act in his drama. And I wasn't his audience anymore.